Hi everyone and welcome back. This video is going to be top 5 tips for successful distance racing. So we're going to be focusing on the two distance races that you usually see in high school, the 2 mile or 3,200 meters in track, and the 5K, which is only done during the cross country season. So there's some really similar physiological things going on there. These two races are more closely tied together than, say, the 2 mile and the mile, just because of the way your body is having to contribute energy and also just the pure length of the race, which deals with body contributing energy. I'll do a similar video on this about the successful tips for running the middle distance race, which I'll include the 800 and the 1600 meters. So, top 5 tips for these distance races. First and most importantly, and you really want to do this in any race, is really have a plan of attack. How do you really want to break these things down? I would say in the 3,200 meters, since you're dealing with 400 meters, you really want to kind of have an idea of what you want to try to attack for each split. You can have someone calling out your race splits. It's really easy now with a stopwatch or your phone or whatever to have someone to say that, that lap was in this, or you're halfway through, you're doing this. So if you have someone who's trying to say break 10 minutes, you want to know that that would be an even split of 75 seconds, so you could kind of break it down from there. Typically, you're going to want to you're not just going to want to even split it, and that'll come down to this a little bit later, but most importantly, have a plan of attack. For the 5K, there's almost always mile markers on any cross-country course. Sometimes they'll break it down into Ks, but it's usually a little bit easier just for people to process. My first mile time should be about here, my second mile time should be about here, and kind of so on. So that's really the important thing here. You can break it down any other way, but that's what I think is sort of the easiest way for people to get, is to process it into either 400 meter segments and then maybe first mile, second mile in the 3,200 meters, and then break it down into miles in the 5K. Secondly, and almost as important, and you're going to use this as you're building your plan, is to know yourself and the race demands. If you're running the 2 mile, you need to know that basically the most success in that race is going to come from a reverse split or a faster second half, and you need to know yourself what that means for you. What can I maintain? What can I sustain for the first mile and still have a good second mile? So often you'll see kids that want to try and run with that kid they know who's a top 10 performer in state, or maybe a state champion or something like that, and they try and go out for them thinking, I can just hold on. I'm just going to demand it of myself that I'm going to hold on. And it's not usually possible, because that person's going to be running at a totally different intensity than you. If you've got somebody who, say, is, I don't know, a 920, let's say 922 miler, which is 70-second splits, and you're somebody who's never gone under 10 minutes before, well, your first mile is going to be much closer to your mile PR than it is for that other person. They're going to be able to be running aerobically for the first mile, and you need to be doing the same thing. A 2 mile is an aerobic race. It's basically the classic test for what your best aerobic pace can be. Your fastest aerobic pace, VO2 max test, is typically 2 miles to exhaustion. So you need to be running aerobically for that first mile, and more than that first mile, to be able to come through successfully. And that's speaking to yourself, knowing where your aerobic pace is, and just knowing the demands of the race. Same thing with the 5K. It's run at 97% of your VO2 max or 2 mile pace. So you really need to understand those race demands. And in fact, cut it right here. What is that? So I was just speaking to this, I might as well just bring it up. This is from the USATF distance coaches curriculum. It's basically the energy system contributions based on VO2 max. So VO2 max is right here at 100%. This is your 2 mile pace. 3K is a little bit shorter, so it's going to be run a little bit faster. 5K is right here at 97%, or 97% of this 100% VO2 max. Like I was just mentioning, if you try and run that first mile at close to your mile, or to your actual mile PR, look how much further away you are than somebody who is sitting here at an aerobic intensity. Now, this is showing the amount of energy that's coming from the acid-producing energy system. So somebody who's running right here is getting about maybe 13% of their energy from the anaerobic glycolytic system, or that energy system that causes fatigue from jelly leg feeling, versus somebody up here getting more of that energy from that system. Doesn't seem like a lot, but over these long races, it's why you see people bonk at the end of a lot of these races, where they're just struggling to kind of get in. If you're somebody that's looking at the 10K, it's going to be more at 92%. Marathon, which is way longer, much more aerobic. 800 meters is way out here, so that just kind of speaks to the differences in knowing where those intensities are and knowing the demands of the race. So let's get back to where we were here. You need to know what the competition is in your race. So, as I was just mentioning, if you know that the #1 seed in that race is a 9:20 kid, use the example I was using before, or the girl who's gone, under 11 minutes, and you're somebody who's a minute off that time, you don't want to try and stay with that person. Also, I mean, you want to know if a team or a group of people are someone that tends to go out fast, or if they tend to have this plan of attack and they run a little bit more smartly. We have a lot of different teams in our area. Some of them that I'll tell the kids, hey, just lock right onto that group. They know what they're doing. They're going to pull you to where you need to be. I've already looked at where they are, where my own kids are, and that kind of thing. And then there are some teams that I'm like, just let them go. They're going to do kind of foolish things. They don't need to suck you into the same mentality. So you really need to know the competition, know where their PRs are, but how do they like to run? Do they like to have a plan, know their own self, and those race demands? And that builds in with this fourth point about easy does it early and in the middle of the race. And I've already spoken to this a little bit early on. You cannot run a successful 5K only because of the first mile, but you can absolutely screw it up. Same thing, you can't win the 2 mile because of a great first lap, but man, you can mess the whole thing up for the next 7. So really kind of focus in on that. Now, that doesn't mean you're walking. All of these races are very, very high demand, but they're longer too. So there has to be that in between. I like to talk to my group about it, is all these races, and this even includes your 800 and your 1600 meters, is your race needs to be broken into 2 main chunks. Besides the start, where you have to kind of clear all the nonsense that happens at the beginning of a race, but you've got your comfort zone. That first 75% of the race, where it's relatively comfortable. You're running aerobically in the 2 mile. You're running aerobically in the 5K. It's not that it's easy, but it's comfortable. You can maintain that pace because you're not calling on these other energy systems to supply more of the energy. The last quarter of the race, so you're talking the last 800 or the last about mile, it's a little bit less than that in a 5K, is something that's different. That's where you do want to really go after it, but you can't go after that last bit or the critical zone where the race is won and lost if you've gone too hard at the beginning. So easy does it early and middle of the race so that you can really lock in at the end. And I want to show you a couple of instances where this really sort of plays out. So this is from our meet this year at Spanish River in Boca Raton. I'm at the first mile mark. I'm going to show you where we've got a kid in this race named Jared Hamill. I've got a couple of race breakdowns on him. Really solid junior runner. He was 10th in our state this last year at 15:55 in the 5K. He's a 9:40 kid before our season was cut short in the 2 mile. And just look at how many kids are in front of him at this point in the race here at the mile. And I'll kind of count them out here too. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is 10 right here. 11, 12, sorry, I'm moving around, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, 20, 21, 22, 23, 4, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 31. Still haven't seen Jared. 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. 40th, maybe I miscounted, maybe I counted somebody twice, maybe I missed somebody, but it's anywhere from 39 to 40 at the mile marker, okay? Just kind of coming through very, very comfortably. I'm probably yelling like a maniac at him, but he looks very, very comfortable just sitting behind this pack, no panic. Okay, official results from this, Jared ends up finishing 7th in that race. So if he was sitting there in, say, 40th place, that means that he passed a lot of people in the next 2 miles. He passed 33 people to get into that top 10 and ran a fairly successful time for him at this point in the season. It was our second or third race. He had never broken 16 before this season, so we're just kind of getting him used to where his new normal was. But that gives you an idea of what you can do if you don't kill yourself early. A lot of these kids, so he was sitting all the way down here. In fact, that was actually one of our kids. Interesting. So we had a kid that wasn't even in that top 40 who jumped into the top 40 because of his performance on the second half either, but he was all the way down here. So a ton of these kids went out faster than they should have, and really probably kids all the way down here went out faster than they should have. So that kind of speaks the idea of early and middle of the race needs to be a bit easier. Bringing us to the last point, that only works though if you set it up for an all-out finish in that critical zone. And I was just mentioning this. It's the last mile, and that's just kind of a good checkpoint. It would probably be more like the last K or so, and if you were to break it up into actually 25%, but it's just sort of a point that you can tell your kids, you know, you're at the second mile, now we got to start to move in the 5K. And there's different things in a 5K. Maybe there's a hill or something like that you're trying to time things out with where you're moving them. But in the 3,200 meters, this means the last 800. And that means a slight movement on the 7th lap, and you go on that last lap. And it is just all out finishing in the critical zone. So it means having a plan so that you know yourself and knowing what easy means for you early and easy for the race. Knowing the competition so you don't get sucked into this too much too early. But building to this point here, this is where the race is won and lost. This determines if you have a PR or not, right? You can't do this if you haven't set up these other 4 things. They definitely build on each other to have that plan, knowing yourself, competition, easy does it early and mid, and then all out. And I want to show you what an all-out finish can look like in one of these distance races. So this is from a kid who had graduated, who's currently running at a Division I program called University of Illinois at Chicago. His name is Trey Rivers. This is ending the 7th lap at our regional meet when he qualified for state. Trey is right here in 3rd place. And these 3 were kind of trading things off. These 2 are juniors in the race. This young man here is currently running at Stetson, a very strong distance program here in the state of Florida. He is a senior. So let's kind of see, actually this was 2 years ago now that I think about it. Let's just kind of see how this plays out. Tristan is the young man in 1st place, and he's already starting to move. You can kind of see his mechanics, and he pulls away from the other 2 here starting this last lap. Ben is from Sarasota High School, and he's actually a 2-time state cross-country champion. He's also a 2-mile state champion. Is in 2nd, and Trey is in 3rd. Tristan's checking the competition, but he is opening up this gap. He is just laying into this last lap. And Trey is now starting to really lay into it here on the last 300 meters, setting himself up. Top 4 get out, so all 3 of these kids are easily getting out into the state meet. But really look at how Trey really sort of is locked in here on these last 300. Going to the outside here. Don't really recommend that on a turn, but he kind of had to because there's only 1 turn left to go. And as I said, just all out. You would not be able to see that kind of turnover if Trey had gone out too fast, too early. Closes it out. Good mechanics all the way through because he didn't kill himself earlier in the race. I'm going to jump to a little bit later in this video where you guys can see the lap breakdown. And what I'm talking about, this kind of all sort of plays right into it, like I was saying before. So he was 2nd place, he was 9:25. It was a PR at this point. Our goal for him was to be right in and around between, we wanted really 9:20, so we were trying to split 70, which would be even splitting. Didn't quite get there, but we were pretty close. 71, 72, 72, 72, 448 first mile. Very, very solid, right within that realm that we were trying to get to here. We were trying to get to a New Balance qualifying time, which is why we had that in mind. We were pretty comfortable he was going to get to the state meet at this point. And then 70, 71, 71. I would have liked to seen these traded just a little bit, but the race kind of broke down this way the way it was. And then boom, 63. Like I said, all out on that last bit. Things really started to move here on the 7th lap as you saw those 3 definitely separated. A 438, and this is a reverse split. Like I was saying, you have that plan of attack. We knew that he could hold this kind of intensity, that he can run aerobically in the high 440s. We knew the competition. We knew it was these three kids in this race that were separated from each other, and how they were going to do it. I mean, Tristan, the kid who won, was from St. Cloud, a fantastic distance program that definitely knows what they're doing. And then Ben's from Sarasota High School, a multi-time state championship program. We knew that he was not going to get too ahead of himself either. So we knew the runners. We definitely checked off the idea of easy does it. I mean, these are not easy splits, but for where Trey was at this point in his career, this was a comfort zone, right? Going through that's probably an average of about 71 was comfortable for him. And it meant that he could all out this last lap, this 63 on that last lap. So, the last boxes here, I'm going to be coming back with a companion video that looks at successful tips for mid-distance, the 800 and the 1600 meters, and it's about, I'd say about half the same as this other list with some very key differences that I'll post in another video here. Just because about half of what is similar between distance and mid-distance do apply, but there are some key differences that really make sense, so stay tuned for that video. If you like this video, please think about liking or subscribing. If you have any questions, please ask them in the comment down below. If you found this helpful, maybe think about sharing it around. And until next time, this has been Coachy TV.